Allyson, welcome to the show. So first of all, let's start with what brought you to the UK in the first place?
Well, it's nearly 31 years ago that I took a job offer from PA Consulting Group, and not appreciating the cost of living in central London, I accepted the salary I was offered, which was extremely low, I should say, in 1988. And I think that combined with the fact that the office was located in Knightsbridge, one of the most expensive shopping districts in the city, opposite Harvey Nichols, another extremely expensive department store. Needless to say, I learned about this concept of an overdraft pretty quickly on arrival. But I had a great experience learning a lot about the British culture, European companies, and being a marketing consultant helping their clients to expand meant that I learned a heck of a lot in a short amount of time.
And you stayed. What made you stay?
Well, yes, I have stayed. I didn't know how long I'd be here. I ended up moving from PA Consulting Group to Hay Management Consultants, really enjoyed that role. Then thought, well, I'm now going to try my own business and see if I can crack it. And in the course of all of this, I met a fantastic man after living here for about 2 years. And that was a big reason to stay. And since that time, we married. We have a daughter. I'm still here, luckily a dual national, so I have my US citizenship still and UK. And I have to say, I absolutely love this country and I love living here. So I think I'll be here for another 31 years if I'm lucky.
That's fantastic. That's really good to hear. Now, I have to ask you a question here, and this is a serious question, because we say we all speak English, but in reality, do we really speak the same language?
We really don't speak the same language. The US and the UK, George Bernard Shaw is famous for having said we're divided by a common language. And we truly are. It's not just the vocabulary words that mean different things or are perhaps misconstrued either side of the Atlantic. But actually, American English has evolved to become highly functional, and it's a tool for getting people up and running quickly. And if you look at our history and you think about the waves of immigrants that have been absorbed into the US over a few hundred years, I have to say. And because of that, if you use the subtlety of British English, irony, double entendres, the subtle, indirect inferences that you can do in a more homogeneous culture, and you try that in a culture that's highly diverse, people just aren't going to understand what you're talking about. So American English evolved and has now become functional, low context. In other words, what we say is what we mean. Generally, there aren't several layers of meaning, and it's much more direct. And I think that is probably what gets business people either side of the Atlantic in a lot of trouble.
That's a masterclass in a paragraph there. I mean, that's just fantastic. Thank you. Is that what you would say is different about doing business in the US as opposed to in the UK, the actual way you communicate?
I think that's a huge part of it. I think besides the communication is also other aspects of the culture in the States that have been driven by our history. So we're in a hurry, we're very transactional. And that's because we're in a hurry. So in other words, if you and I were meeting for the first time today, I'd probably get straight down to business. I probably wouldn't ask you too much about how your holidays were over Christmas and what your 2019 is looking like and lots of other things about you. I would probably very quickly get into the detail. And that's because I'm keen to transact with you because I don't want other people to transact with you. And that's the nature of the business culture in the States is get it done quickly, be transactional, and in the process, hopefully I've added some value of educating you or you like me, so you'll want to transact with me again. So those are some of the many things that mean that if you assume that because we speak a version of English in the States, that we must therefore be doing business similarly to the UK, not at all. We're a very different hybrid of a business culture that's an amalgamation of lots of different business cultures. And I guess if I had to say which culture we're most like in the States, I'd have to say German. In that kind of literal, sequential, quantified, and transactional way that makes us very, very different from the UK.
That's really interesting. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of businesses make mistakes when they go into the US and try to get into that vast marketplace. Clearly, that's one of the mistakes where they don't get down to business straight away. Can you share any other mistakes you've seen?
Oh, gosh, there are many. So one of the interesting clients I had a few years ago was a company that makes placemats. So in the UK, the placemat goes under the plate, and then your cutlery goes directly on the table. So the placemats are about the size of an A4 sheet of paper. And so this client went to a trade show for tableware, and it was in the States, and the majority of the visitors to the show were American, department store buyers and gift shop buyers, things like that. And they went by this stand of this British company and thought, well, the designs are really nice, but they just, the placemats are way too small. They must have smaller plates in the UK, because American placemats are wide and tall enough to be able to accommodate both the plate and the cutlery. So when they looked at the British sizes, they thought that was really strange that they were so small, and therefore assumed that, the plates must be smaller, the portions must be smaller, when actually that's not what it was about. But because this company hadn't done its homework well enough, they ended up showing a product that no one was really interested in. So, I mean, it goes to show in some ways that you've really got to do your homework, and you really have to localize what you do for the American market and know how they're different, their behaviors and habits are different, the language is different, the global understanding or not is different, and a lot of the assumptions that companies make is what really gets them in trouble.
I like a bigger placemat, to be honest, because it protects your table, your really nice table. So maybe I need to order mine in America. That's what I need to do. Okay, that makes sense. That really makes sense. And what lessons do you think maybe we could learn from the way the Americans do business that we could apply here that you think would work here? That's a big question again. I keep asking big questions.
No, that's absolutely great. They're thoughtful questions. I think one thing about being in a hurry in America that I do like, even though you miss context by being in a hurry, but the upside of that is things get done quickly. And we close deals, we ask for the sale, we give a decision quickly about whether you've won the business or not won the business. So you sort of know where you stand. So for example, even earlier today is a great example. I had an email on Friday afternoon from a US prospective client saying, we'd like to use your help in the UK. Here are the dates in February. Are you available? Are you interested? So I replied within a couple of hours, only because I happened to be in the office and I could do that. And so responsiveness is another aspect of what would be great if the UK responsiveness was maybe as it might be in the States. Not always, but it would be helpful. In any case, I had a quick phone call with this prospective client yesterday, and I was locked in and given the contract yesterday afternoon. Now, it's really unlikely that I'm going to win business in the UK at that kind of pace. It's more likely I'm going to meet in person for a coffee. We're going to talk generally about the opportunity. I'm going to dangle a broad fee range that could be between X and Y, but it'll be quite broad because I don't want to be committal. I don't want to make them embarrassed by asking them to say yes or no to the fee rate. So I'll give them a range that gives wiggle room. I'll then be vague and suggest that wouldn't it be nice if we could talk sometime soon to wrap up the opportunity or move it forward, and they'll say yes, yes, yes. And probably 3 to 4 weeks later, I will hear that there is interest and can we talk or meet again. And probably a few weeks after that, I will learn if I might be in the running for the work. And a few weeks after that, I might learn if I actually win it. So you can see how this transactional piece plays out in the States because we're in a hurry and we want to make decisions and we want to look good to other people that we're decisive. And I have to say, however, the higher the ticket price of the decision, the slower the decision-making process is, because we don't want to risk our reputations. So on the one hand, it's great. On the other hand, if it's, a multi-million pound opportunity, that will take a long time because you have a lot of people that will weigh in with their points of view in the US about whether to go forward with it or not.
It's interesting because when you describe the way business is done in the UK, you basically described my day. It's like Groundhog Day. This is exactly what it's like for us when we're trying to close deals in the UK. I have had this, it's not with all clients, I must say, and I have had exactly that experience with the US. So I'm always in a hurry. I want things done fast. And I also want you to come back to me once I've actually given you a lot of my time and my proposal. And I do want you to, but I want a relationship because I've got this Italian bit in me as well. So I'm a bit of a hybrid. So all of this makes total sense to me, total sense. Now, you actually wrote a book about this, didn't you, about working with Americans? And is it right that it actually was the first ever business book at the Hay Festival?
It was. So thanks to the gentleman that set up the Hay Festival, Peter Florence. He and I met through a group called the British American Project. And on the back of that, I said, listen, it would be great to share some of these ideas with people that come to the festival. And he said, that's a great idea. We have nonfiction writers and books, but we don't have business books. Let's give it a go. So that would have been in, 2002, summer of 2002. When I appeared, and I was in amazing company with, several well-known authors, many of whom you represent, in fact, and was very fortunate to be in that sort of milieu with an audience asking similar questions, who are, scratching their head about, well, wait, how is it that there's American, culture that's obviously of British DNA originally? How could we be so different? But that DNA has been bred out over the last 250 or so years to a great extent, and now we're our own unique hybrid, an amalgamation of all these different influences and cultures. But yes, it was a real honor to have been at that festival, being able to talk about our book.
Brilliant. And that was the book Working with Americans, specifically on that topic?
That's correct, yes. So that book has provided many a laugh and tear to readers who are either deeply frustrated by some of the business challenges that they face with my countrymen, and sometimes laughter because they'll see situations we talk about in the book, and they'll think, oh gosh, I really recognize that. That's exactly what happened to me. And that's the point, is to have something that's a handy guide that you can dip in and out of.
Brilliant. And have you read books by any other authors that have influenced you? Is there one that stands out?
That's a great question. There are a few. I think I was really very influenced by a book by a gentleman called Fons Trompenaars. And he wrote a book called Riding the Waves of Culture, well before ours. And he so lucidly, with his co-author Charles Hampton Turner, explained how you can measure culture, how you can describe culture. And I think that was really helpful in being able to distill what you feel in your gut and the stress you experience when a meeting isn't going well, or when your business growth is not going to plan. You know something's wrong, you know it intuitively, but the fact that there's a model that they have that will let you pinpoint what the issues could be is hugely helpful. So I'm a big fan of their work and of that book in particular.
Or the Fons, as we affectionately call him. He's a mixture of cultures as well. Being half French and half Dutch makes him an expert in the problems of culture, actually. It's quite brilliant. So you're doing a lot of work with leaders at the moment. You're helping them to build their brands and their reputations. What do you think business professionals should be doing in that regard to get it right?
Well, I think business leaders don't think enough about their reputations in their companies and outside of them. And I think we just are often on autopilot. We go from meeting to meeting, we have conference calls, we send emails, but I'm not sure we're really thinking about how we want the other person to feel on the back of any interaction with us. And, as Maya Angelou said, it's not what you did, it's how you made me feel. And that's what we remember. So I think what leaders ought to be much more cognizant of and intentional about is what they want to be famous for. I don't think when you get to senior levels in companies, many leaders have really thought through what reputation they want and what they should be famous for. So yes, I'm spending a lot of time with corporate leaders in all parts of the world, really, helping them think through their brand, how they show up face to face, how they show up on video, how they show up on social media, what kind of opinions are they communicating? Are they towing a boring corporate party line, or are they actually weighing in on an argument or a debate with a point of view that's informed and hopefully is able to persuade other people and change other people's minds. So that's really engaging and fascinating work, because the principles of marketing is what we're applying, but to an individual person and an individual leader.
And actually, it's really important. I think your reputation is probably the most important thing you have. And it's very fragile as well, of course, isn't it? Because you can lose it so quickly. So you mentioned social media, and you have a very strange name on social media, and you're going to have to tell me the story. I think it's great. I really like it. So on Twitter, you are Muse of Marketing. How did you get that name?
Well, I'm thankful that I had this interesting situation, because I wouldn't have got that name otherwise. So I used to appear once a week on Sky News Television. They had a half-hour business show every evening called The Business Report. And I would show up once a week with my 5 or 6 minutes view on a particular company and how well I thought it was doing marketing. And the host is a super professional guy who's been in the news business for 25 years. And when I first started appearing, he said, and tonight we're joined by our mistress of marketing, Allyson Stewart-Allen. And I thought, ooh, mistress of marketing, that doesn't sound too good. And Michael kept repeating, tonight, again, this week, we're back with Mistress of Marketing. And I thought, I've got to do something about this brand name, because if I don't do something, it's going to stick. And Michael will just continue to call me the Mistress of Marketing. So I went away and thought, okay, what are words that start with M besides mistress? So I could be the master of marketing. And then I thought, or I could maybe be the muse of marketing. And I wrote down a bunch of different words that start with M. But I landed on Muse of Marketing because I just like, the idea of ancient Greece, of a muse who has wisdom, who shares that wisdom. I just thought, oh, that's perfect. And I'm going to take that on as my brand. And in the early days of Twitter, when it wasn't, as crowded as it is today, you could claim a username or a handle easily. And I thought, gosh, I'm sure people must have Muse of Marketing as their Twitter name. Anyway, I was very lucky that no one else had grabbed it. So I grabbed it. But had Michael and the Sky News experience not happened, I would never have had this name.
I am going to refer to you as the Muse of Marketing in future. You know that now, don't you? It's a great title. So what are the subjects that you've been writing about of late, and that you've been asked to talk about for clients at events?
So, in addition to the personal branding topic, I'm increasingly looking at how you as a leader can be really effective across all cultures, not just the US, UK, or America, Europe axis, but regardless of where in the world you are. How can you think about how you influence and persuade other people, how you communicate, how you bring them with you, how you use language, how you use emotion. And that's super interesting, because it's a combination of negotiation skills, which you can learn through studying, reading great books, practicing, but it's more about the open mind, the global mindset, the willingness to do something different to what works for you at home, and to challenge your assumptions that what works at home will not necessarily work everywhere around the world. And that's the bit that is really enriching, partly because I'm helping the leader be much more effective, but also I'm learning a lot about what the leaders are doing in different parts of the world that do or don't resonate. And so that's taking up a fair bit of my time, and I'm enjoying it. So that's one. I'm updating our book, Working with Americans. We have a second edition that'll be out later in the year. And I'm focused quite a lot on that. As well, I'm doing some leadership programs for Said Business School at Oxford, working with a well-known jewelry retailer on helping their people to really understand what it takes to bring others with you. And that's at the core of what leadership is. It's engendering the trust from other people. And I think those things alone are keeping me pretty busy at the moment on both sides of the Atlantic.
Really excellent topics, really valuable stuff. Thank you very much for sharing that. So on a more personal note, I know you've got a perfume collection and you rather like perfume, and you've got on your bucket list, you want to meet, is it Jean-Claude Elena, who is the retired Hermes house nose. So I love perfume, by the way. So I really love it. So what's your current favorite perfume?
Oh, what a great question.
What do you wear?
So at the moment today, well, it depends on the weather, and because the temperature outside and also the humidity will affect how something smells. So today I'm wearing a fragrance by Miller Harris, which is a company set up by a British perfumer called Lynn Harris. She was educated in the south of France, in Grasse, where a lot of the famous perfumers are educated, and also where the essential oils and perfume ingredients are sold globally from this part of France. So Miller Harris do a fantastic range, and the one I'm wearing today is called Poirier d'un Soir, which in English means evening pear tree.
Mm.
It's lovely. It's woody. It smells of pears. It's a unisex fragrance, which I quite like. I don't generally go for sticky, sweet stuff much or fruity things, but I go for things that are green, grassy, a bit earthy. And I have over 150 perfumes in my collection. So I have a lot of choice, and that's probably what takes me the most time in the morning, is deciding what I'm going to wear that day.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love perfumes. I love smells, and I love not only perfumes, but I also like food smells. So I like good smells. So that's great, wonderful. So finally, to finish off, I want to share that you have a secret skill, which is something that I do not have this skill at all. You are able to remember people's phone numbers.
Mm.
Has that come in handy at all?
It's come in really handy when I've lost my phone. And I don't know why I have this or where it's come from. It's a really strange Rain Man type of skill that I've always had. But I, for example, still remember my home phone number in LA. Well, both numbers in LA. The first one where I lived between the ages of 3 and 8. And then the phone number from the age of 12 to 19. And I don't know why this is, but I remember those. I remember, I mean, I don't even often need to look at the phone. I just know the number and I'll just dial it. So yeah, it's a really strange skill. I'm sure someone somewhere listening to us today will be thinking, gosh, that's, you know, either on the spectrum somewhere in terms of, you know, autism or Asperger's, and quite possibly. I certainly have a short attention span, and I suspect it's related to my ADD tendencies. But yes, it's a really strange one that's actually really handy when you go into meetings too, and you can recite the numbers that, you know, were first talked about a couple of years ago in a meeting, and people think, gosh, why do you remember that number? But I just do.
That's brilliant. It's also useful when you're getting a phone call coming in and you recognise the number, think, do I really want to answer that or not? That's quite useful too. Well, listen, there's nothing left to say but to say thank you so much. I could talk to you all day about the Americans, but I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much. We will share various Twitter handles. We'll share links to your books and everything. And goodbye and thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate you asking me today.